Hi everyone, welcome back to this series called A Very Opinionated ASP.NET Core Architecture. Again, I'm sorry for the long name. I'm a developer, so I'm bad at naming things. Anyway, this is session number 4 titled REPR Endpoints. So, the goal of this video, of this session, is to take what we did in the previous video, in video 3, where we added the REPR controllers, and we're going to change out those controllers. So instead of using traditional ASP.NET controllers, we're actually going to start using the minimal API stuff. And there are some reasons for that, and I'll go over them. I'll mention again those pros and cons. But I think just kind of before we start, the main reason that I want to go ahead and make that migration is because I do think that the way that we will end up implementing that ends up being a little easier for us to understand, a lot easier to look at the code, read it, and understand exactly what it's doing. So that is the goal for this session. Nothing too crazy, but it is a direct continuation off of the previous one. So if you haven't watched that one already, probably want to go back and watch video number 3. Alright, and before we go ahead and actually start things, just a reminder one more time, this is all completely opinionated, my personal opinion. I just want to go ahead and show off a different way of architecting a standard application. It doesn't have to be the same way every single time, the way, you know, everything has been showing in tutorials, in videos, examples, all that kind of stuff, right? It doesn't have to be the standard way. Anyway, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, insults, etc., we have the YouTube comments right here, and there is also social media. You can find me on LinkedIn and Blue Sky. Direct links to that are on my site, programmerl.com, or just search ProgrammerL. That's usually me. Alright, so that stuff out of the way, let's actually jump into the code. So here we have our code. This is a direct copy from the previous week, from the 0-3 folder. So if you're looking at the code on GitHub, we just started directly from there. So, in the previous episode, session series, I need to standardize a name. Anyway, the last video, we went and added these two controllers. We used the REPR pattern to say that each individual file is going to be its own controller, and we're only going to have a single endpoint in that controller. So this one has a get, the other one has a post. We also nested some classes. We have the request and the response in here to show that, you know, every endpoint gets its own request and response. No sharing, because sharing can lead to confusion, which can just kind of make things a little murky. So let's change things up just a little bit. So I said we're going to start using the minimal APIs, and let's do that. So what I usually prefer to do that, the way I usually prefer to do that is to create a folder called Endpoints, which is embarrassing. I already have that. So we have this endpoints folder, and you can see I may have had to start the video before it restarted. Anyway, we have this folder. We have an endpoints folder, and we're gonna do pretty much what we did previously. So I'm gonna add yet another folder, and we'll call this one ratings. And now we're gonna go ahead and add a new minimal API endpoint. Now you're probably used to seeing minimal APIs in examples online where that code, that method, you know, it's a single method, single endpoint, and that is just in the program CS file, right? That's not something that really scales well. If you have 1, 2 endpoints, sure, right? It's great for tutorials, great for small examples, but as soon as you need to make an actual application that anyone will actually be using, it falls apart really quickly, right? It wasn't really made for that. And so that's why we're going to go ahead and start adding endpoints, but it's a method, right? So we'll just make a static call. So copy pasted some code over here, and as you can see, we still have the same concept, right? So instead of the name being get ratings controller, now it's get ratings endpoint. It's just a naming convention. You can call it whatever you want. I like the name endpoint. I feel like that's a little more descriptive, right? Single file, single endpoint. I feel like that's a good one there. So in here we have a static method called register API endpoint, and in here we still have the same code. We're specifying a route, and we are actually adding a summary down here. So we'll do a little comparison in a second, but I also want to call out that the request and response, that code is exactly the same. That stuff did not change. It's It's exactly as it was. So I'm going to go ahead in Visual Studio. I'm going to copy the full path. I have WinMerge already loaded up here, and I'm having some trouble with my mouse. There we go. All right, so I have WinMerge. We'll go ahead and paste that, and let's do a compare. So I want to show off, what are the real differences between these two files. We can ignore the first few lines because that's using statements, right? Then we get down here on the left-hand side, we are seeing the controller, and you can see, hey, we have controller base, we have an attribute. We're specifying this is a controller file because of all of the reflection stuff and everything that ASP.NET has to do on startup. Now, over here on the right-hand side, for our endpoint, we don't have any of that. We just have a single static method that's going to go ahead and do that registration for us. So whether you think that's better or worse, that's your call. Honestly, I think that's more of a judgment call. But pros and cons to that. I just wanted to call out how that works. Now, the actual implementation over here on the left-hand side with the controller, we are saying, again, with an attribute, hey, this is an HTTP GET, and this is the ratings endpoint. Over here on the right-hand side, we're setting that with a group, and we're actually just using the /. We'll get into that a little bit later, why we're not specifying /ratings. But the short answer is we're doing that in a different spot. We just haven't set that code up yet in here. This whole fake response, get response, all that stuff, returning an OK over here on the left, it's done the same over here on the right-hand side, right? We create our object, our fake response, we return typed results, and this is just to kind of help the compiler and say, hey, what exactly are we returning? We do have this as parameters and required attribute over here, and we're kind of done with that. We'll get back over here to this endpoint, because now that I want to talk about this, remember in the past we would receive, or with controllers we would receive our input. So in order to do that for a get, we have to say, hey, these parameters as an object, we just need that attribute. And then the same thing with required. That was the same as before. I'm going to do the same thing over here with the post, and I'm going to copy paste from a different file, and the post is pretty much the same. So, we have our static method over here, register API endpoint. We are specifying the endpoint, the route. Again, notice we're not putting the /ratings part of the URL, which we will be adding later, just not right now. And then we have our actual implementation, which is the same as what we have in the post for the controller. We have not yet implemented that, so this is just kind of stubbed out. We're still receiving in our body this request, right? This whole request body is the same as what we had before, so no real change there. The real change is just where the code goes and kind of how we register it, but we haven't registered anything yet. So let's go back over here to program.cs and notice that here on line 13 we have our builder.services.add-controllers, and then down here on line 33 we have app.map-controllers, and both of those are the things that we need to tell ASP.NET, hey, look at our code, find the things that we have set our controllers, and use them, right? You do your reflection or whatever magic it is you need to do on startup to set all that stuff up for us. One of the downsides with the minimal APIs, we don't really have that. So we have to kind of manually map those. And that is one of the downsides to following this version, because it is a manual thing, you have to make sure you remember to do that. And if you forget, well, then you just don't have an endpoint, right? That is one of the hassles. So we're going to go ahead and copy paste some code that we have over here. And I'm adding this new file that I call __ ratings endpoints. This is just a file that I'm going to go ahead and have just the single static method to map those endpoints. So in this case, map ratings endpoints. We're creating a group, so we can say the path is going to be /API/ratings. As far as these tags that you're seeing, this is all Swagger stuff. So we didn't add it previously, but we're going to go ahead and register this endpoint. We'll give it the ratings tag, and here we go. Now we can actually look. I can have 12 into this. This is what we had before. So notice that route. So we're going to have we're going to set up our default route, API/ratings, and nothing else after that. But as far as our post goes, it'll be API/ratings/new rating. So now we're getting back into that whole grouping thing that we kind of lost a little bit with the controllers. Again, we could have actually set that up correctly, it probably would have just been more work. And like I said in the previous video, it's just not a thing I've never used. Now, I do want to call out this expression right here. You know, the return values are never used. For my own simplicity, I felt like this was a little bit easier. This file, usually easier to copy paste. You know, for if you want things to be a little bit cleaner, we can do the other thing. We can, you know, suppress it using the attribute. That's another good way. I just feel like in this case, it's such a small file. We don't really need to add this attribute, which usually ends up honestly being 3 lines because it's so long, right? There's all this extra text. So I think in this case right here, it's a little bit easier to just have the comment right there. Again, that is a preference thing, right? We have so many different ways to handle that. I do think that handling the expression value, the return value of a method is important, but I do think that there's value in saying and telling other developers, in this spot right here, we really do not care, because we're not using it, right? I mean, I would rather, oops, I would rather not have to type out that code every time we do this. So now we have this set up, so we can actually go ahead and wire this up. Let's actually wire this up down here. So I'm just going to paste that file just so that Visual Studio automatically adds the using statement for me, so save me a little bit of time. And I already forgot the name of it. Map ratings endpoints. There we go. So I should hit Control-Shift-B, and the build has started, and the build has succeeded. Now, unfortunately, this is where we have to delete the controllers because we have some collisions on those endpoints, and we don't need them. So let's go ahead and delete those controllers. Okay. Oh, no, access is denied. Oh, it's because I still have WinMerge open. All right, well, goodbye to you. And there we go. Now we'll go ahead and delete those controllers. All right, perfect. Control-Shift-B, build succeeded, as you can see in the bottom left. So I'll hit F5 to go ahead and start this application, and we can look at what this looks like in Swagger now. So I'll click on this, and notice we have some information, right? So we have our /API/ratings. We have the, you know, this is in the ratings section, and actually our tags, I'm not sure where those tags show up. Anyway, we only added the one tag. Yeah, we can go ahead and run this, and I can enter whatever count because it's all hard-coded stuff, so we're not actually using it. Oh, that's right, max of 50. Sure, we'll enter 50. Cool. And hey, we got our response. I guess the only thing to actually care about left is for this post. We probably want to update that string. I'll go ahead and do that outside of the video. It's fine. We have our schemas for our actual request and response objects. I don't think we had those before. One of the things that's really cool about using the minimal APIs is I feel like setting up some of that Swagger stuff is a little bit easier. So as an example, the reason that we get that typed information is because of this line right here. At the end of the return, we say typed results dot okay, and we're able to go ahead and return, you know, the object. So it knows, oh, we're returning get ratings response. So that's something that ASP.NET kind of has hooked in to be able to register with Swagger. One of the other registers with the other. Either way, that information makes its way to Swagger. So we're able to see, you know, all of that information about what actually gets returned. So that is essentially it for this video. I just want to call out, you know, really simple. We replace those controllers with endpoints. It is a different way to go ahead and map those. The downside is, yeah, we do have to have some extra code. Whoops, over here. We do have to have this extra code to kind of map it, which means that once we go and if we want to add a new endpoint, let's say we want to put, right, we want to update a rating, then we're also going to have to come in here to this file and add like the put registration, you know, something like that. And in this scenario, or put rating, whatever. And in that scenario, you know, that's all we'd have to do because this will have already been hooked up, right? We already have the, you know, map ratings endpoints. If we decide to go and add a new set of endpoints, then we'll probably have to have that new one, right? App dot, you know, map others or whatever it is that we call it. So that is a little bit more work, more manual work, more stuff that we as developers are going to have to remember. So that is a downside to this. There are, I guess you could say there are ways to kind of fix this, and that is something that I will be talking about in a much later video. It's not a perfect way, but it is a way to kind of help with that. I will leave that a little bit shrouded in mystery. And for now, I guess I'll go ahead and sign off. So, take care, everyone. Hey everyone, sorry, while I was editing this video, I realized I don't think I did a good explanation of why these endpoints are, in my mind, better than a controller. So I'm going to try to do that again. So let me switch over so that way you see all of the code and everything right here. So looking at what we have here, right, an endpoint, from what we can see, compared to something like the controller class over here, right, the controller, traditionally, when we think of the controller, right, it's that hierarchy, single class, multiple endpoints, right? That's the idea behind a controller. That's how we usually think of it. Versus the endpoint, it's a new thing, so it's easy for us as humans to kind of switch and say, new thing, new rules. Let me learn those rules. And so it's easier to look at that and think, okay, cool, we're going to go ahead and follow these rules and say, endpoint, single endpoint in it. So if we go back to the controller class over here, looking at this, hey, there's just a single ratings endpoint, but you know what could be easy, right? We can kind of make that argument for ourselves, like, hey, what if we added another one and we added, you know, an ID, right? We're going to get a single rating there, and maybe there are multiple ratings with that ID. So hey, you know, maybe we can use the same request object, right? And you can tell how easy it is to go ahead and fall into that mindset, right? Those old ways of doing things. Versus if we have a single endpoint over here, yeah, it's possible. You know, we could just go ahead and do this, and then we can copy paste, and we can then do, hey, here's our new, you know, /ID, you know, endpoint, right? So yeah, it is still possible to do the exact same thing, but I look at this and I see a single file that looks, in my mind, a little bit cleaner, like just like 2% cleaner, because of that, right? We have the nomenclature, right? It's an endpoint, right? A controller, it's a single controller, but controllers have multiple endpoints. Endpoint right here has a single endpoint, and so this is just the human side of software development, right? Where we're looking at the code and, you know, as a human, how do we reason about these things? And why do I think that this mindset is a little bit better than the other side? Okay, I'm going to stop there before I go on too much of a tangent, but that's basically the argument. It's not a great argument. It's just one different way to go ahead and make these endpoints. Anyway, back to the rest of the video.